Talk to you about thermoregulation, how the body creates the heat that makes you sweat. That process, the sweat process, which cools you down, and things to avoid and be at least be aware of. So this topic is certainly not as pertinent as it was perhaps a few weeks ago when it was really warm. We're getting into cool weather, and that's fine. That's great for heat dispensate, getting rid of heat. Get rid of heat. So let's first examine how heat is produced in the body when you begin to exercise, or even when you're moving energetically. Let's put it that way. Playing golf, playing sports, even that. The heat and the humidity present a serious problem that you should be aware of. So everybody is aware that hydration has become increasingly important over the past few years. In Japan, kind of a late comer to the table. It was only in the last, I would say, roughly 10 years that they recognized the necessity for drinking water while you're exercising. And so they've adapted that pretty well, actually. As a matter of fact, so well that now they're coming out with warning signals about drinking too much water. But I digress. So let's examine the process first. So you begin to do more than just sit and watch TV. You're out taking a walk, you're playing golf outside, and it's reasonably warm. The general guidelines established by the American College of Sports Medicine is that if the temperature is 30 degrees centigrade or higher, and the humidity is 65%, those two, not just one, 30 degrees temperature and 65% humidity, exercise is not advised. And of those, which is the more important? Well, if it was 30 degrees and the humidity was low, it wouldn't be as bad. It's the humidity that causes the serious problems. So keep that in mind. You begin to exercise, and heat is generated close to the bones. Muscle movement creates friction. The protein filaments contract and distend, contract and distend. That creates heat. That's what calories are, a unit of heat. You burn calories and you create heat. So the blood gets superheated. And in order for that blood to be cooled, the body has to cool it in some way, shape, or form. So what it does is it increases your blood pressure, and the blood pressure forces that superheated blood towards the surface of the skin. The hypothalamus, which is the lower part of your brain that acts as a monitor of body function, determines that, okay, the superheated blood is arriving now, so it stimulates the sweat glands, sweat is produced, and when the sweat evaporates, providing the blood is just below the surface of the skin, the cooling effect takes place. The superheated blood is cooled with evaporation of sweat, and then that rotation rotates back. So the superheated blood is constantly being moved to the surface of the just underneath the skin, and these sweat glands are stimulated. Sweat is produced, sweat evaporates, blood is cooled. That process, that circulatory process, is the way the body controls heat, and that's called thermoregulation. So the problem is, how does that blood move from where it's being heated, close to the bones, the muscles close to the bones? How is that being heated? How is that being moved to the surface of the skin? Well, it's being moved with blood pressure. And that's what happens. Blood pressure picks up, pushes that blood towards the surface of the body, just below the skin. And again, the process commences. one of the problems is if you don't have to be obese, but even a thin coating of fat uh, along the extremities or all over the body prevents uh, the cooling process to reach the superheated blood. So even though the body even the hypothalamus is moving blood to the surface of the skin to get cooled, it's not getting cooled. So, but the hypothalamus doesn't know that, so it keeps pumping blood, and your blood pressure rises, in some cases, very dramatically, to the point where it causes serious problems if in other areas of the body, primarily in veins and arteries that are not particularly strengthened, capillary beds which may not be present. So what happens is potentially blood vessels burst, and then you have serious problems like heart attacks, strokes, those kinds of things. So heat is a serious consideration, and humidity. Now, most of us live and work in a controlled environment. We're not outside tilling the fields and working in the hot sun. But a lot of us play golf. A lot of us go out and play in the garden, work in the garden. And it's the same thing. The body doesn't determine what you're doing as much as the temperature and the humidity surrounding you. Of course, if you're out just sitting in the sun, it's not necessarily a problem. But if you're working and performing physical work where muscles are contracting, then that heat is generated on a pretty intense level. And correspondingly, high blood pressure picks up to facilitate the cooling process. So, in order to counteract that particular process, we drink water. So, no brainer, right? Everybody knows, just for your information, 2.5 liters of water. For those of you who are not familiar with liters, it's a liter is about a quart. So 2.5 quarts of liquid per day will facilitate the water loss that you will get if you work or play in a hot, humid environment. So suppose you're not outside. Suppose you're in a gym. Well, most gyms are maintained at a certain temperature, even though temperature for certain activities should ideally be changed. So if you're doing aerobic activity, normally it should be the temperature that your activity is being conducted in, like studios, should be around 22, 23 degrees centigrade. So it's cool. But as you exercise, you'll warm up. That's not a problem. If you're doing weight training, resistance training, the ideal temperature or to promote the best situation promoting growth, the enhancement of growth hormones, seems to be between 24 and 26 degrees centigrade. If you're doing very physically, I hesitate to use the word passive, comparatively, not aggressive movements like yoga, which is controlled, slow, you're not out of breath. You can work in, say, up to 30 degrees centigrade, provided the humidity is not too high. Now, lately, certain gyms have advised, are conducting classes, and they advocate exercising in very hot, very warm, over 35 degrees centigrade, and with humidity is somewhat controlled. Those of you who have perhaps blood pressure difficulties, circulatory problems, or are getting along in years, I would suggest that you avoid anything over certainly 35 degrees. And I would suggest that everybody, as much as possible, adhere to the American College of Sports Medicine's guidelines of 30 degrees centigrade and under 65% humidity. And that'll take care of it. that'll take care of it, meaning it won't place you necessarily in physical danger or in jeopardy. So, one other thing I think you should be aware of, and of course, that's clothing. So, when you're exercising in a warm environment, and even if the environment is not necessarily, if you're doing aerobic conditioning and it's not in a facility where the temperature is controlled to facilitate cooling of the body, saying maintaining a temperature of 22 to 23 degrees centigrade. If you're exercising then, but you're still going to warm up, you're still going to get warm, and you're probably still going to sweat depending upon the intensity of your workout. So be aware of that. For all of you who are heavy, who have more than the normally suggested fat percentages, so if you're over, say, 28% body fat, that's going to impair the regulatory process. So you're going to overheat quickly. So be aware of that. Also, those of you who have a heavy musculature, I happen to, after 60 years of pushing steel around, I have somewhat enhanced musculature. So I overheat very quickly, very quickly. Something that is difficult to get rid of if you have either too much fat or too much muscle. Even when you're running outside in a comfortable environment, you will generate a great deal of heat. So you should not wear clothing that interferes with that heat regulation process. And that includes things like rubberized training suits. I still don't understand why people do this, but they wear training wear that prevents sweat from evaporating. And of course, it promotes fatigue. So running without a training suit on is basically burns the same calories as running with a training suit on. If you're maintaining the same pulse rate, the same pace, there's really no significant difference. What people fail to understand is many people feel that running with this training suit promotes weight loss. In fact, it doesn't. What it does is promotes fatigue. So if you did not have a training suit on, but you wore what is generally advocated as loose fitting clothing to allow the perspiration to evaporate and cool the body, you would be able to run longer and probably faster without a training suit, and certainly without one of these rubberized suits that you see professional boxers training in. And probably that's where it came from. Professional boxers have to make weight very quickly. Now, with the advent of sports nutritionists advising professional sports people on what to eat so they don't get overweight, so they do meet their particular weight objective to make weight for a particular weight class in competition, they have responsible nutritionists that contribute to gradually reducing body weight to meet the requirement of their weight class without the corresponding diminishment in fitness. In the past, people were confused. And so they wore these rubberized weight suits, training suits, to lose weight quickly. What they lost was body fluid. They did not lose body fat. But somehow that idea is still maintained even today. So I will see people in the gym who want to lose weight and through exercise, which is another thing we should talk about, wearing these rubberized or heavy-duty training suits, thinking that this is going to facilitate weight loss. In fact, it doesn't. Mark, thank you for tuning in. And Mark's confused. So I suppose I should expand on that a bit. Weight loss, reducing body weight, is not what you want to do, really. What you want to do is reduce body fat. Okay, so you exercise and pay attention to nutrition so you don't eat excessively, and you will gradually lose body fat. The fact that people say, well, I could just get on the treadmill and run for an hour and my body weight drops by a kilogram. Well, that's a kilogram of water, primarily. The body just does not burn energy that quickly. The body wants to retain as much energy as possible to keep you alive. But people continually make the misconception. And not to digress too much, but if you exercise for an hour in an effort to primarily aerobic conditioning, which will raise your metabolism and you'll burn a certain amount of body fat more efficiently than weight training, that is true. And you'll lose water and your weight will drop. But your body fat percent will not appreciably diminish. And that's basically the caloric expenditure that's included in your exercise regimen. You're raising your metabolism long term, which aerobic exercise does not, but weight training does. And paying attention to diet so that after you're finished with your workout and your blood sugar has dropped, you don't, even though you may crave sugar, whether it is complex carbohydrates or refined carbohydrates. And if you do that, if you eat more calories in carbohydrate than you burned in exercise, basically exercise will make you fat. So it just keep in mind that water loss and body fat loss are two entirely different things. So I digress, but I think that's important to clear up because people will place themselves in a very, very hazardous situation in their pursuit of reducing body fat. But I think we talked about that a few episodes before about losing body fat. If, for example, you are out in the garden and it's a warm day and you are foolish enough not to wear a hat and you start getting overheated, drinking water will help, but it won't immediately relieve the feelings of, in many cases, disorientation, faintness, dizziness. What's happening is that the process I described previously, where the regulatory process has been interrupted either by the clothing you're wearing, the excess adipose tissue that you have, excessive fat that you have, or excessive musculature, or simply an intolerance to excessive heat. And if you're foolish enough to be outside in 30 degrees and 70% humidity, this situation is just enhanced. So what do? You drink water. Well, yes, you could do that. You could also go into an air conditioning unit, or if you don't have an air conditioning unit, you can jump in a cold bath, and that'll drop your body temperature down immediately. If you can't do that, then you go to the nearest machine that distributes ice cold drinks in cans, and you take that ice cold can and you put it at the base of your skull where the hypothalamus is. And then that tells the hypothalamus, hey, you're cool. You don't have to raise your blood pressure anymore. The body's cooling off. So you fool the body into thinking that it's not necessary to continually to shunt blood from the bones where it's being heated to the surface of the skin where it can be cooled. So you're fooling the body and saying, okay, we're not heating up now. Hypothalamus, you can calm down, lower my blood pressure, give me a break here. And that's immediate relief in a matter of literally seconds. Your blood pressure will drop like a rock and you will recuperate. At that point, get out of the sun, get out of the heat, okay? Take a rest, drink fluids. You have to be careful. This can kill you. Just in case you want blunt, this can kill you. To ignore the fact that the heat, the sun is just a wonderful thing to enjoy. Well, yes, it is, with limits. And the older you get, the more susceptible you are to the hazardous effects of too much sun and too much humidity. I'll revise that. Too much humidity, period. And that happens in fitness centers. I've been in fitness centers, quote unquote, gyms, where there's no air conditioning whatsoever. I train a pretty elite force in Japan, and their training area in the summer is in the second floor of a gymnasium. Not a gym, a gymnasium, basketball court. So it's up on the balcony. And the ceiling is made out of teppan, steel. And the temperature in that particular exercise area, the free weight area, gets up to 42, 43 degrees centigrade with about 75, 80% humidity. It is literally hotter than a sauna. And yet that's the only place they have to work out. Now, in the past, Japan, and even today, these things that I've talked about tonight, thermoregulation, are ignored. You have children outside playing baseball in the summer, and the old samurai mentality of you just put up with it. You just gum on it. Put up with it, and you'll get through it. Well, some people do and some people don't. And it's just a shame that you'll have a child that has a heat stroke and people feel there's something wrong with him because he's playing baseball. All the kids play baseball, and it's 30, 35 degrees outside, and it's, 60, 70% humidity. And so what? Well, that level of ignorance is just, in my book, it's criminal, and it happens all the time. So don't let it happen to you. Don't let it happen to you. Marathons. We're talking full marathons here. Marathon training. There's a lot of things you have to be aware of when you're training for a marathon. And one of them is how much heat you generate during either your practice runs or in the marathon per se. Normally, simple hydration is not sufficient. You will see, if you observe a full marathon in the summer or even in the hot spring, you will see experienced marathon runners going to the, let's say, rest area, the area where they can have a cup of water and they can drink some sweet things to keep their blood sugar. They will put a wet sponge on their head in the back of their neck, which is the equivalent of putting a cold can of juice or beer or water on the back of your neck. Drinking water is important. Keeping your head and the back of your neck cool is another way. And probably on an immediate level, more important. People make the mistake of saying that drinking water, well, I put on weight. Well, that's absurd. Actually, drinking water while you're working out stimulates metabolism and will promote weight loss. So keep that in mind as well. So that's thermoregulation in a nutshell. All you have to do is be aware of what's going on. If you are a little bit heavy and your body fat percent is high, especially in your upper body, uh, you go outside in 35-degree temperature. I was just in Yokohama a few weeks ago. Young woman was outside taking pictures for like an hour. Came in and was just feeling dizzy, and she was young, in her early 30s. Uh, and literally, I just kind of grabbed her and brought her into the office and just poured cold water on the back of her neck, and she recovered just like that, just like that, in a matter of 60 seconds. She was fine. That's how quick this is. It's a very important, worthwhile trick to know, how to trick the body into not continually raising your blood sugar and causing you serious cardiovascular problems. So be aware of that. And that's kind of all that I have to say on the issue. Most fitness centers do not have separate areas for aerobic conditioning, muscular conditioning, and stretching. They're usually all in the same room. Now, they may hold classes in the studio, and when those classes are not being held, you can go into that studio to do the stretching if you want. But normally, most gyms keep it around 25, 26 degrees, a little bit cool, and that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Again, heavier people can't dispense the heat quickly enough, efficiently enough. So be cautious. If you feel that you're out of sorts, you're getting a little nauseous, a little dizzy, it usually means that you're in the heat for too long, and you should be cautious. So drink water and keep your head cool, and stay out of the sun, and beware of the humidity. It'll kill you. So Mark is I've been training with Mark for several weeks now, and he is used to hearing of these things from me. So I hope this has been the information has been helpful. When you are training in a gym or outside, be aware of your environment and how it contributes to your performance. And certainly, I shouldn't really talk about too cold, because too cold is like, I mean, even if it's 0 degrees centigrade here, you can still exercise outside. There's no serious problems. If you're in an environment, for example, just as an add-on to this, if you're in an environment where you begin and the weather is cool and it warms up during the day, the approach is to wear what they call a layered approach, which means you can wear clothing that you can take off as you continue through your exercise program. A lot of runners do that full marathons. Somebody like myself, it takes a long time to finish a marathon. When it starts out in the morning, it's pretty cool. So you wear something that you can take off and throw away. I remember when I was running the Honolulu Marathon, and it was cool in the morning. It starts at like 5 o'clock. But by the time I finished, it's like 10 o'clock in the morning, and it's warm. So what people would do is they take a garbage bag, and they cut a hole in it, and they put the garbage bag on, plastic garbage bag. And underneath, they'd have their regular running clothes on. And so you run for an hour or two, you're getting pretty warm, it's warming up outside, humidity is picking up, so you take off the garbage bag and throw it away, and that's fine. People will come by and pick them up and clean up afterwards. That's not a problem. So, and you never, if you're doing that level of condition, like a full marathon, you never miss a water stop. Always have a cup of water. Always have, and Honolulu is the only full marathon I've ever run. They give you a water section, and then you move on, and 3 paces down the line is a section with Coca-Cola or Pepsi-Cola with the soda water removed. So it's like diluted syrup, but it's very sweet, but it raises your blood sugar. And you never miss one of those either. So keep that in mind. Thermoregulation is a fancy term for getting rid of the heat. And exercising or playing or even working in hot, humid conditions is something you should be aware of, especially as you get older. Believe me, you place yourself in serious jeopardy. So I hope this helps. If you have any questions, any comments, Mark and I have been working out for 5 years. Wow, it's been that long. And I think he's fully acclimated to my speeches. So thank you very much for tuning in. I hope this has been informative. And I wish you all the luck in your training. And just be cautious. Remember, effective, efficient, and safe training is the way to go. Thank you very much. I will sign off and see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.